What's up, everybody? It's Nikki Valentine. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, if you were here 6 years ago, let's talk about where the heck I've been. But before we do that, please like, share, and subscribe. So here's where I've been for the last 6 years. I started a YouTube when I started coaching. And actually, I started coaching 8 years ago, and I started the YouTube a couple years later. And then, you guys, this is actually what happened. Literally within 6 months of me starting that YouTube, I got hired by Spotify. I had been working in tech before that, and sometimes when a call comes, you have to just answer that call. And so, actually, if you look back at some of those old videos, they were recorded in the conference rooms of Spotify New York City after work because I was trying to juggle my social media, juggle working in tech, juggle like all of these things. And what's crazy about that job is that upon starting, I had to travel to Europe literally every 2 months. And so, on top of working full time and coaching, taking clients, running a business, I just literally was never on the ground. I was in someone's hotel room or I was recovering from jet lag, which, fun fact, it takes you the amount of time you were gone to recover from jet lag. So, I would be gone for 2 weeks and back for 2 weeks, recovering from jet lag, and then have to leave again in another 2 weeks. It was shambles for many years until 2020 when we all stopped and sat down for a few minutes. So, I chose at that time to do short form content. So you might have seen me in my glasses on TikTok. There's about 200,000 of us over there. You might have seen me on Instagram doing talking head videos talking about root trauma healing, emotional wound processing, rewiring your subconscious mind to manifest and attract the life that you want. We also talk about rewiring your nervous system so that you can actually hold those changes that you're making and sustain them. And so I figured now is the perfect time to come on back to YouTube. Because here's the truth. I have made over 400 videos on TikTok. Some of those are now coming here. Those are in my shorts for those of you who weren't over there. I'm bringing the party to YouTube. But I feel like I want to dig into long form content. I love to teach. I love group coaching, which is actually where I started. And I just feel like there's so much more information to share, and I want to have a place for us to talk. Because the truth is, Instagram and TikTok doesn't give us enough community vibe. It doesn't give us enough let's sit around the fire and talk vibes. And so that's what I want to do on YouTube is hear more from you guys and be able to have a space that we can respond and have an ongoing conversation. So we are here. Now, here's what I think is interesting about this return to YouTube and also just a pivot in general in my life and in my business. I started off doing a lot of quantum mechanics work, talking about manifesting, talking about universal laws, talking about how you can utilize that in your own life to get where you want to be. But then I realized that there's actually a lot of healing work that has to happen so that people can feel ready to embrace the things that they're manifesting, right? And then I took another pivot, which is, okay, but is your nervous system in a place that it can actually support that too? Because we talk a lot about what we want, the woman we want to be, all the healing work that we've done, where we're trying to get to. But have you rewired your mind and your body to actually support that transition? Or do you feel like you're just in a never ending healing spiral? Okay. This is what I help my clients out of. You can read all the books, you can go to the retreats, you can go to therapy. But if you're not being taught how to shift your identity so you can actually show up differently, if you're not showing how to think differently, if you're not shown how to support your system to actually become and live as and move as a new version, you're going to feel stuck. And so that's what we're going to explore on this YouTube. We're going to go into things like polyvagal theory, how your nervous system works. We're going to go into quantum mechanics and quantum physics and how you can impress your thoughts and your desires upon this 3D quantum field that we have. We're going to talk more about root trauma and how you can actually get past that and not keep discussing it for the next 50 years. We're going to talk about things like beauty, love, health, and how all of that is actually something that you should be prioritizing, not just constantly healing. You should be putting time into looking as beautiful as you can and being your highest version and enjoying your life and being in great health and showing your self-worth through how you express yourself. So that's what we're going to get into. And I'm excited. And of course, I want to hear from you guys in the comments, questions that you have, things you've wanted me to get more into. If you follow me on any of those other socials, what is the meat that I left on the bone? What were you wondering? And here's the other thing we're going to do here. We're going to get into my personal life because that's the other thing I want to share a snippet of as to why I started coaching in the first place, why I'm an identity alchemist, why I change who you think you are, and that helps you change the rest of your life. So I am from a beautiful little island called Jamaica. Maybe you've heard of it. I'm from Kingston, and my family came here to America when I was 7. But that created a root trauma of going from wealth to poverty. When I was a kid, I had a nanny. And I've never talked about this publicly because as a Black woman, it feels like kind of taboo, but I grew up with an in-house nanny. My father had earned $1 million from his business by the time he was 30 and by the time I was about 3 or 4. My mom was also an executive in banking. They both traveled very often, and that's actually why we had to have the nanny because they were always gone. So while my parents provided and were wonderful and I had a great lifestyle, they were so busy. God, them people were busy. You wonder why I'm always hopping on and off someone's plane? I learned it from my parents. Okay, I learned how to pack in 30 minutes from my father, right? But that created root traumas in me that carried me through the rest of my life and made me an overachiever and a people pleaser and an overgiver and feeling like I had to perform to get attention. Because the truth is, my parents' attention were split. They love us to death. Both of my parents actually call me princess to this day. So that's the other thing is a mother and father wound doesn't come from always hateful, evil, and mean parents. Sometimes they are just busy. Sometimes they just had issues between themselves, right? And so I had to do that version of my life. And then we moved to America. And my mom went from a banking executive to a caregiver and a housekeeper. And I had to watch what happens when relationships break up. I watch what happens when the funds go away. I watched my mother have to restart her life at 35. She eventually got back into banking and worked her way all the way back up, which is amazing. She's retired from it now. But all of that left an impression on me. All of that left an impression and it created a survival identity in me in which, one, I was very angry. Two, I was very extra. Three, I felt like I had to prove to the world that I was worth something. When really I was trying to prove to my parents I was worth something and why they should stay and why they should pay attention to me. Even though I didn't need that, they were just in a space in their life in which they didn't have all the time in the world, right? But when I realized the effect this had on me, it eventually led me to illness. My mother got remarried, and there was some traumatic who's it was going on in the house until about high school. And all of that started to take a toll on me physically. I, over the years, developed PCOS, fibromyalgia. I actually have physical issues in which I have an anterior tilted pelvis and I had a leg that was 2 inches shorter than the other. But even after we fixed those things physically in physical therapy, my pain level continued into my 20s and 30s. And I remember I finally had a world-renowned physical therapist tell me, he said, I want you to start going to therapy and I want you to start getting body work. I want you to get Reiki. I want you to do somatic exercise. I had never heard of any of this. I was in my 20s. And he was like, you will keep coming here and I will keep fixing your leg and your back. But what's happening is that you have trauma that is stored in the body outside of the physical things I can fix. And so they will keep resurfacing. And actually, that is what started me on my journey of deep research to holistic healing. Y'all, I have literally done acupuncture, cupping, Reiki, somatic exercises, yoga, meditation, like Qigong. I've done La Ho Chi, Reiki, like you name it, I've tried it because I was in so much pain. There was a time in my life in which I had migraines 5 days a week and was still working 40 hours a week as a banker and running a fashion business, right? When I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, I was working in tech 60 hours a week because tech is relentless and no joke. I was doing launches for American Express at 2 o'clock in the morning while I was at parties at my friends on my laptop in the corner. So between excessive attempts to achieve and burning myself out and childhood trauma being stuck in my body and having nowhere to go, it eventually attacked my system. It attacked my nervous system. Also, I'm autistic, so I really was never supposed to be under all of this stimulation in the first damn place, right? But all of this web that I wove in my life led me to understand how to unwind that and how to heal your mind, your body, and your subconscious, right? And that is why I'm passionate about this work. Now, here's the other leg of what I do. I'm really passionate about quantum mechanics and quantum physics and taking control of your mind and your vibration and your frequency to create real changes in your life. Here's why I'm passionate about that. Because as people of color, we don't always have privilege or a silver spoon. Like I told you, I had to watch my mother start over again at 35. My mother introduced me to Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking, when she was in her 30s. Because she understood that if you don't have privilege, the only thing that you have to rebuild your life and to get to a different place is your faith, your mindset, and your frequency. And she taught me about that from a very young age. I come from a very highly spiritual family also. And I have finally answered that call to show up and do what it is I'm supposed to do. And so that's why I'm passionate about it, because I was the kid working from the age of 14. I was babysitting. I had an old lady neighbor who I would clean off her porch. Then I graduated to working at ice cream shops, and I worked 2 jobs in high school. I worked 3 jobs in college. I'm Jamaican as hell. Well, one thing we're gonna do is work, okay? But I figured out at some point there has to be an easier way. I may not be a trust fund kid, but there's got to be an easier way. And as soon as I started learning about these things and manifesting and co-creating with God, things changed for me. I went from making $7 an hour to 6 figures and getting raises every year on top of that 6 figures. Right? I grew a TikTok from literally 0 to 200,000 people at almost 40 years old. There are things I have done that logically make no sense, but that's what I like to teach is that we don't stay in logic. We live in a quite magical universe, and God has given us quite a bit of magical power in it. And so when we utilize that and we heal our body and we regulate our nervous system, some pretty cool things can start to happen. And that is what we're going to get into on this page. So I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you want to learn from me. I'd love to hear what you want the next video to be. Also, I just love analyzing reality TV from a higher perspective and from the perspective of somebody who is in mental health. I do have a degree in human development. I also have my MBA, so I have literally been studying transformation of humans and businesses for the last 20 years. I also am an NYC Thrive Mental Health First Aid certified practitioner. I also am an IWA certified holistic wellness coach. So just short resume. I'm gonna start talking about different reality shows here. And in fact, I think my next video is going to be on the Ready to Love Detroit reunion because I love to give a trauma informed, identity informed, quantum mechanics informed view on shows that are just fun to watch. So that'll be the next one coming up. And also, Ready to Love Detroit Part 2 reunion is coming on tonight. So you'll get that video in the next couple days too. So as always, I love you. I'm excited about this journey. Drop down in the comments. Let me know what you think. And we're going to have a party here. We're going to have a good time. Alrighty? I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Mwah.